It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I'm your game master and host, Tyler Hapney, and I am here to tell you a little bit about my thoughts on Dungeons & Dragons and Cyberpunk Red. That is, of course, the name of the game for this podcast, Dungeons and Dystopias. We have taken a little bit of a break, and we're back. The holidays were crazy, so I had to get up to a whole lot of things, but we're here now. And doing a little bit better. My usual audio editing software isn't working right now, so I'm using Audacity. I don't know how that's going to affect the quality of the podcast, but hey, you know what? I think it should be fine. I think we're okay. We've missed 2 weeks. That was Christmas and New Year's, just for reference. So we're coming back after 2 weeks, and I'm like, well, what do I want to talk about? What exactly do I want to speak about? And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I don't know. I mean, look, after a 2-week break, maybe I want to do something a little different. Maybe I want to do something a little interesting. So today, I think maybe we just kind of go over some stories. Maybe I don't know. I'm just really interested in starting off kind of easy. If that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about my Planescape campaign. Because I unfortunately haven't been able to play that one as much as I want to because just my group's more interested in Cyberpunk at the moment. But I don't know. I'm really pumped for my Planescape stuff, and I've even got a couple fun stories about my Planescape campaign. So you know what? Yeah, I'll tell you guys a little bit about it. So Planescape. We've talked about Planescape before, but just for a reminder for anyone who doesn't want to go back and listen to 20 minutes, Planescape is a D&D setting that tries to combine essentially all of the D&D settings into one. And it is all unified through one location called Sigil, or you could also call it the Outlands if you want to be more, I guess, catch-all. But yeah, it's based around essentially. Oh, I keep saying essentially today. I don't know why. That's the word of the day. But basically, it's this sort of like Tatooine, Mos Eisley, middle of the universe. There's everything there. You can get to everywhere you want. Sigil is a passageway to all these different settings and cool little areas throughout the D&D cosmos, which usually for a D&D campaign, you're only in one area, usually one plane, a material plane, maybe, Avernus, if you're doing Descent into Avernus. But for the most part, a lot of your D&D stuff's going to be on the material plane, like just kind of naturally. So Planescape automatically sets itself apart from a lot of the other settings by being this sort of cosmic planar adventure where all sorts of things can happen. And, things that happen in the material plane definitely don't exactly happen, exactly the same way as they would in Planescape. Because, Planescape is it's like everything. It's every single D&D book mixed into one. And that's for a dungeon master, that really leaves it open for you to do pretty much anything you want, as long as it's, kind of makes sense with lore and canon. But even then, most D&D players, they don't even know the lore or the canon of anything. So whatever, you know what? As long as you don't have a super cool expert, I mean, hey, you probably get away with a lot, but that's just between you and me. So going back to how I've been running Planescape. So, my Cyberpunk sessions, the way I run them is we've been doing a sort of a system where I have a list of missions, a really long list of missions, like 20 something missions that they can do. And they're all prepared and they're all ready. And, you just choose them and you run them. And, yeah, basically, either some of those missions are linked through storylines. I'll have that linked if they're like part of a storyline or something like that. But for the most part, my players will come in each week, maybe a few days before the session, and be like, okay, here's what I'm thinking we do on Saturday. And usually there's like a vote. And a lot of times the vote, usually works out. We don't really have ties or anything. I can't even remember the last time we had a tie. But but yeah, they choose the mission and they go forth and we do it. And in Cyberpunk, usually it's like, oh, it's been a week between sessions to allow characters to heal or work or whatever they want to do, get therapy. Not so much a Planescape. Planescape, we don't actually have a set time or date or anything. Is all very kind of loosey goosey within the sort of realm of, hey, there's an unspecified amount of time passing between these missions. And I mean, it's been working out. No one's ever actually asked me how many days it's been between each mission. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even pretend to know. It's not necessarily something that has crossed my mind. I would say probably like a week or a couple weeks between missions, realistically, but hey, who knows? It could be like the next day. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of how my Planescape thing is set up similarly as well. It's just I have like a spreadsheet with all of the missions that are available, all the missions that have been completed, blah, blah, blah. And they go and pick and choose their various options. Now, the way I kind of have it set up is that these missions are coming from, a lot of these missions at least, are coming from the Planeswalkers Guild, which I took from Tales from the Infinite Staircase, from the original, I think it was like 2E. I took that kind of idea. I was like, well, what if we gave them like somewhere in, Sigil instead of the Infinite Staircase, which they absolutely are still at. Don't worry, because I've got plans on that. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, we've got the full Planeswalker Guild, and we don't have a ton of lore for the Planeswalker Guild, at least not from Infinite Staircase. I mean, any lore we did have from Infinite Staircase is probably outdated anyway, because that stuff's like, in universe, like at least 100 years old. So like, a lot of room for improvement, a lot of room for people to be different, kind of do your own thing with the Planeswalker Guild, which is what I did. I have it run by this Mind Flayer guy named Chunchuresque. Very people just call him Q. Um, and he's he's got the mind of an Illithid, so he's able to kind of keep tabs on a lot of these different planes, kind of not at the same time, but you get what I mean. Like he's got a bigger, more expanded mindset, so he's able to use that to keep up with what the Planeswalker Guilds needs to keep up with, because there's so many things going on throughout the planes. And the way that people contact the Planeswalker Guild is it's something I've called the ritual of bargaining, which is it's like very similar to like a Dark Brotherhood kind of deal, where they do this ritual and then someone talks to them from the Planeswalker Guild. And that's kind of been sort of the setup for a lot of my beginning of the Planeswalker campaign is yeah, they're just all members of the Planeswalker Guild, and they're kind of doing these gigs. And just like Welcome to Night City, by Cyberpunk campaign, things have sort of started to expand a bit. So we're now getting more storylines rather than just like, oh, here are the kind of the monster of the week sort of missions, or like, go out and kill this thing. Now it's like, hey, people are doing things because their characters are determined to do them, and not because I've been asked, or they've been asked to do them. Which is personally where I always try to get with these campaigns. It's always nice to set up with all these missions that are kind of like just basic, generic, whatever. But the goal is always, always, always to start establishing character motivations, character feelings, character like backgrounds and histories and stuff. And that way you can use them to form, personal storylines. And that's huge for me, at least. I love having those sort of storylines that kind of rely upon, one player's character, maybe a bit more, and then maybe the next week we have, go to another storyline that has another player's character kind of at the forefront. And we can explore characters in that way, and put them through all sorts of things, because this is Planescape, and you can really do a whole lot in Planescape that you can't do in regular D&D. I know I keep saying that, but I seriously have to stress it. It is such a cool setting. So, what are some of the missions they've done? Well, um, one of the ones that I happen to really enjoy was they did they were hired on by the Planeswalker Guild to go out and help break a Githyanki pirate out of prison. But it turns out it wasn't a Githyanki the whole time. It was an Illithid pirate who was a Githyanki, or Githzerai, excuse me, who had been turned into an Illithid. And they had to break him out of prison, and obviously they had this whole like, whoa, he's an Illithid, what do we do, guys, kind of thing. But it was, end of the day, they decided the money was a bit more worth it, and wound up releasing this Illithid pirate captain back out into the wild. And for that, they were the Planeswalker Guild, not necessarily them, but the Planeswalker Guild was given a ship of some standard. It wasn't necessarily the best one, but it is a ship, and it works. So now what we're doing is we have a whole play, like a Spelljammer kind of thing, where I've made a sort of Spelljammer storyline that they can pursue, which they haven't. That mission's still absolutely waiting for them. But another thing I've done with my Planeswalker campaign is I've added Shemeshka. Shemeshka is the main villain of Turn of Fortune's Wheel. But I feel like she's got a lot more potential than what they did with her in Turn of Fortune's Wheel. She's like this, basically, she's an evil Arcanoloth crime lord, is the basic way to, she's the mob of Sigil, and she's got a lot of connections in a lot of places. She's very generally, I would consider her neutral evil, maybe lawful evil, but I don't know about that. She is extremely just very manipulative. Generally just a very, very bad person to be on their bad side. But yeah, Shemeshka, I've had her introduced as well in case my players want to wind up doing like crime missions, like stealing and heisting and all that other things. We've got Shemeshka for that, who is also very interested in obtaining information from all sorts of sources. So of course, players being an amazing source for information because they go to all sorts of places. And that is kind of why Shemeshka is at a sort of friendly point with my players. At least the ones that are coming through the Fortune's Wheel and taking her jobs. But there's always potential for things to go wrong there. It's Shemeshka. So if you cross her, you really kind of step in it with her. She has a lot of connections and can make your life a living hell. But as long as you're on her good side, and you go to the Fortune's Wheel and you spend your money and you gamble all that stuff away, whatever. That's fine. And speaking of Fortune's Wheel, last little detail I kind of want to go over on my campaign. I love the Fortune's Wheel. I love it as a location. I love it as a gambling spot, as a social hangout for your players. If you have Turn of Fortune's Wheel, and you have the ability to use the Fortune's Wheel in your campaign, I'd say absolutely go for it. It is such a neat location, and it's a gold sink. I swear, I reward my players with gold at the end of all of these missions, and most of the time, like I'd say 7 out of 10 times, my players immediately turn around and gamble it away at the Fortune's Wheel. Sometimes they make good stuff. Sometimes they get really good stuff, but a lot of times, it's like, well, that's gambling for you, you're not going to get everything all the time. So I don't know. It's really just a gold stick for my players, and it's working. It's working so well. A lot of players don't even have money because they spend it all on gambling. And I, as a DM, am not going to stop them because I think it's hilarious. And, I think it makes for a sort of interesting role play further down the road when they need something with, money that they don't have. So now they have to find money. And that can lead to all sorts of interesting little scenarios that might even affect the way the entire session goes. Like, it's just something that's like, hey, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I haven't gone into any, I guess, no specific stories. I've pretty much just told you about my campaign, but hey, man, I'm just like, I'm really into it. All right. I guess I could finish our metaphorical monsters of the week by telling you guys a bit of a story. I don't know what necessarily I would make our metaphorical monster of the week, or well, it's not a metaphorical monster of the week. This is D&D. It'd be an actual monster of the week. That's right. Okay, I think I know. What we're gonna do is we're going to discuss lizard folk And I'm not even going to be discussing lizard folk normally. I don't think. I mean, all right, typical lizard folk, kind of tribal, cannibalistic. They are such a cool race. If you ask me, I like lizard folk. I don't play them a ton, but when I do see them around, it's always a good time. It is always, always, always a good time with a lizard folk. But yeah, so we're gonna talk about sigil lizard folk, or at least the ones in one of my sessions. So my players were investigating a mafia of rat folk. That's pretty much the best way to describe it. That's kind of what was going on. Um, and so they wound up in the sewers. The sewers are underneath probably the worst part of Sigil. And that would probably be like the lower ward, the hive, that area. Um and they were pursuing these rats and they found a gang of lizard folk down in the sewers. And I took that opportunity to make a very, very stupid tunnel snakes rule, Fallout 3 kind of bit. And apparently my players love that. They really ran with that bit. To the point where now they are relying upon in the future, potentially if they're in the sewers, the tunnel snakes to be allies. Um, I didn't expect that as sort of a one-off thing, but yeah, no, tunnel snakes did wind up helping them. They wound up giving them the location of the rat folk hideout, and yeah, well, the whole time they were really cool, and they all sounded like John Travolta. So really really fun things there. I've also used lizard folk to great effect in. I did a cowboy campaign a while ago using D&D. Probably not the best thing to do, honestly. This was before I played Deadlands and all the other ones. I just had D&D, and like every D&D 5e player, I was like, "Hey, let's just make it work for everything." That doesn't work. Doesn't work for everything. Um, there are some systems that are a lot better for other things. But yeah, uh, in my cowboy campaign, I used lizard folk to great effect because they were in a desert setting, and I was like, well, what's in the desert? A lot of reptiles. They can handle the sun. They got, colder blood. So I was like, well, you know, I think in this sort of cowboy setting, there would be a lot of lizard folk. A lot of Wanti, a lot of reptilian, whatever. I don't even know. Would we count the frog people, the grung, as reptilian? They weren't there, but that's just a thought. I guess they're amphibian, actually, so no. But anyways, yes. So there was a lot of exploration of lizard folk culture in my cowboy campaign, because they basically ran one of the countries that sort of took place in. So I don't. It's just like these guys, these little freaks of nature are so cool. I could probably go into their actual stat block here because usually they do have some sort of stat block, and it's nothing gonna be great. Usually, if I remember the lizard folk stat block, yeah, it's 1/2 CR. So they're not really gonna be doing anything special. The only thing that they have that's really, really, really special is the ability to hold breath for 15 minutes. Yeah, don't be trying to escape lizard folk underwater, guys. It won't work. Unless you got like scuba gear, which in a normal D&D setting in the Forgotten Realms, scuba gear is not exactly a thing that's around. But the spell, hold breath and all that stuff probably are. So, should be okay. As long as you could outlast 15 minutes of lizard folk, you know, pursuing you. Uh, but yeah, man, wow. I think that's going to be bringing us to the end of our podcast here. Like I said, we did miss 2 weeks, and I do apologize for that. My holiday season was absolutely swamped with all sorts of stuff, all sorts of business. And I really just wasn't able to get on and record. I mean, I know it's a 20-minute podcast. I probably could have, but at the same time, there was just a lot going on. And honestly, I think I might have forgotten a little bit. I might have let it slip away from me, and that's my bad. Oops. But as for now, my name is Tyler Happney. This has been Dungeons and Dystopias. Please come back next week where we go back to talking a little bit more about Cyberpunk Red. And in fact, speaking of Cyberpunk Red, I might have an interesting little project to announce here coming up shortly. Not this week, maybe not even next week or the week after, or maybe even this month. But somewhere along the line, I have an announcement to make, and it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a really good one. I don't want to get into too much detail, but hey, if you ever want to watch me DM, you might just get that opportunity soon. But as for now, I'm going to leave it at that and say, hey, please come back next week and listen to some Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Tyler Hapney, and I will see you next week.